If you are a member of the Calvary Prophecy Report email alert system, you have heard already that Israel has decided to de-escalate the Gaza war, meaning they are going to continue to push forward in their search for tunnels, their rescue attempt of the supposed soldier that is still at large and considered kidnapped. Although I have a hard time believing that's the case. I suspect that he has been killed. He may have been kidnapped at first, but I don't think that he's probably still alive, but it's possible. But Israel leadership has said that they will continue to do what it takes. They're going to continue to stay in Gaza on the outskirts to prevent any type of tunnel building, and they will continue to occupy areas that are of interest. And at the same time, they will continue to apply as much pressure or as little pressure as they prefer in order to keep Israel safe. So it looks like to me what Israel's done is they have gone as far as they're going to go. They have pushed back the Hamas militants as far as they're going to push them back. And now they are going to redraw what is Gaza in order to maintain a safe and secure Israel. And in order to keep from the Hamas terrorist group of rebuilding their tunnels and resupplying their rocket capabilities. But it doesn't look as though they're going to try to take Gaza or to reoccupy Gaza or whatever the case may be. So I suspect that Israel will allow the terrorists to continue to rule that area. I know there was an article that Stratford did an analysis on. That is, if in fact Israel were to take Gaza and to run Hamas out of that area, they were wondering what would be the alternative. Would something worse take over in Gaza? Because much of the reason why Israel has not wiped out Hamas is the fear that something just as bad or worse would take over that particular stretch of land. So as bad as we might think that Hamas is, there is something possibly worse out there. So I think Israel is content, at least the leadership is content, to allow Hamas to continue to rule, because I think they have come to the realization that if they were to dethrone Hamas, that some other terrorist Islamic group would pop up in its place. But don't expect Israel to take this fight to the bitter end. They have no desire to reoccupy Gaza, and frankly, they have no desire to reoccupy the West Bank either. Nor do they have the manpower to do so. And that has always been, as far as I'm concerned, just another reason why I believe that there's no way that the Psalm 83 war could ever be described as in Israelistine, where Israel takes something like 20 times its land it has now and occupies it, creating a buffer for the outer ring, supposedly. I can't even imagine the terrorist elements that would pop up everywhere throughout this new reoccupied land, because there's no way that 7 or actually 5 million Israelis could be scattered out far enough in order to keep this land safe. They're having a hard enough time keeping it safe as it is with just the amount of land that they have the size of New Jersey. But that's just the thought of mine. That it just seems to me that's just another reason why I say that this theory of the Psalm 83 war is preposterous. Secondly, speaking of preposterous theories, the Islamic State or the ISIS. Many are trying to push the story that the ISIS is about ready to take Iraq, and at the same time the ISIS is going to push throughout the Middle East and try to threaten Israel and Jordan and some of these other places, and they've tried to kind of connect it with a Psalm 83 war. Again, that's simply not going to happen. In fact, many in the Sunni camp, which actually make up much of the ISIS, are fed up with this particular terrorist group. In fact, here's what Stratford has to say about it. It says, although there are clear indications of growing frustration with the Islamic State from within the Sunni resistance, these sentiments have not yet boiled over into a wider internal uprising against jihadists. Stratford has seen only limited indications that Baghdad has begun actively working to turn these rebel factions against the Islamic State. In fact, what Iraq is trying to do, they're trying to make a deal with some of the Sunni rebels or some of the Sunni factions who could be helping the Islamic State, but they're trying to make a deal with them to turn against the Islamic State. And even though they haven't had a tremendous amount of success, they're having a pretty good success at doing that. And going on with the article, it says, as these dissenters grow increasingly vocal and militant, however, Baghdad will increase its efforts to encourage splits, likely with incentives such as financial and material aid, political concessions, or even direct military assistance from state security forces. By pursuing a divide-and-conquer strategy, Baghdad can slowly chip away at the Islamic State support base and increase central government influence within the Sunni community. So right now the Islamic Shiite-run Iraqi government is trying to use the Sunnis to break off from the Islamic State and try to split their support. Going on, it says, however, given the widespread Sunni mistrust of the Shiite leadership in Baghdad, this process will prove to be long and difficult, with the Sunnis driving a hard bargain and making far more serious demands than they have before. In the next few months, resistance to the insurgency's jihadist elements is likely to grow and could lead to larger armed confrontations. However, given the jihadists' relatively small representation within the broader insurgency, this process is unlikely to result in many gains for Iraqi security forces. Until Baghdad begins seriously entertaining the Sunni opposition's demands for greater autonomy, the Iraqi military will face heavy resistance and experience light success in high-cost attempts to retake vast swaths of territory. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard over the last few weeks that the ISIS is in the process of taking Baghdad. Well, that's not simply going to happen. At least not right now, unless something really drastically changes. It's really heading in the other direction. Baghdad is beginning to see tremendous successes in smaller areas, although in the greater strongholds of the Islamic State, they've been unable to wrestle those territories away from the ISIS. We don't expect a military blitz toward Baghdad and the Islamic State taking over, at least not in any time soon. And one thing that you should remember about the ISIS, they are a self-financed terrorist group, which means that there is no major nation states supporting this terrorist group, which is really usually a big problem. And that also means that they are relying upon weapons they secure as opposed to weapons that they receive from major nation states such as Iran or Syria, Saudi Arabia, or some of the other Islamic nations. So there you have it. That is the latest of what's going on in the Middle East and where it is heading at this point in time. And if you don't know the Lord, today is the day of salvation. Don't put that off. 150,000 people die every single day. You could be one of them, and so could I. But you know something? The difference is I know the Lord is Savior. And I hope that is your cry as well, that you know Jesus is Savior. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.